Lights flicker, vending machines reset, a tenant texts the front desk, and 3 hours later, the RTU is dead because a 30-second dip tripped the compressor and it never came back right. You just signed off on an emergency replacement. Hey there, welcome to ONS Insight, where we help you move toward equipment planning and away from crisis management.
That exact call is why we do these episodes. Small, sharp events cause outsized damage. Today, we're digging into practical energy buffers, little bits of hardware and a few control tricks that stop short dips and inrush from turning into full system disasters.
All right, let's get concrete. What do you mean by energy buffer? Give me the short map before you geek out on wiring.
Think of a buffer like a seat belt for electrical and thermal shocks. On the electrical side, DC UPSs that keep the 24-volt control bus alive, and small battery packs that back contactor coils or smooth inrush. Thermal tricks are timed pre-cool or adding chilled mass so the plant doesn't have to slam on at peak.
Wait, quick example so listeners can picture scale. What's a typical spec for a control side UPS?
A common compact unit is a 24-volt UPS rated around 1 to 3 amps hold for the control bus, enough to keep thermostats, sensors, and the RTU board alive through a dip. Price range? Often in the $300 to $800 neighborhood for control-grade gear. Not a whole building battery, just a targeted fix.
That's helpful, because vendors love to jump to hours of backup, and suddenly you're looking at a 6-figure quote.
Exactly. Don't confuse a targeted buffer with resilience for hours. Most of the breakage we see comes from seconds or a few minutes of instability. Target the problem, not the scary worst case.
Okay, show me how that works in a retrofit. I want a picture. Where do these parts go, and who touches what?
Good question. For controls, you mount a DC UPS to the RTU control box and wire it on the 24V bus, so the board, sensors, and thermostats keep power through a dip. For inrush or chattering contactors, we install a battery-backed relay or a small AC-coupled buffer that holds the contactor coil just long enough for a clean close. It's about milliseconds to minutes, not powering the compressor for hours.
Right.
Wiring-wise, line-side changes belong to a licensed electrician. On the control side, many installs use existing terminals and a dry contact interface that the BMS already sees. Document it in your single line so the next tech isn't surprised.
Let me push back a bit. Vendors sometimes say, you're under-speccing and you'll fail. How do I know if I'm actually shortchanging reliability or just being lean?
Fair. The test is data. Run a short baseline, monitor voltage, contactor closures, and BMS alarms for 24-48 hours. If problems cluster in seconds to minutes windows, a small buffer will likely fix it. If you see sustained multi-minute events or repeated demand peaks, that's when you scale up. Lean first, measure, then spend more if needed.
Let's dig into the BMS side. What concrete logic changes keep these buffers from creating false alarms or masking real faults?
Start with 3 simple rules. 1. Add short delays and hysteresis so a 1-second dip doesn't raise a high-priority alarm. 2. Monitor contactor state to detect chattering instead of immediately flagging a compressor fault. 3. Create a buffer active flag in the BMS logic that suppresses nuisance alerts while you log events. And importantly, log everything heavily during the pilot so you can tune thresholds.
So add a delay. How long are we talking? A couple seconds? A minute?
For control dips and contactor chatter, 2 to 10 seconds of delay is often enough. For alarm hysteresis, set a slightly longer window so you don't re-alert on the same event. The exact numbers depend on the failure mode. That's why that initial logging window matters.
Safety checklist. Because managers worry about batteries and life safety wiring. What are the must-do items?
Don't touch life safety circuits. That's the rule. Use UL-listed equipment for the application. Ventilate battery enclosures if required. Install proper fusing and isolation. And have a licensed electrician sign off on any line-side work.
For control-side UPSs, confirm the unit's listing and failure mode. Does it fail safe? And add the changes to your O&M documents.
You mentioned micro examples earlier. Can we get a quick cost and sizing sketch so a manager can justify a pilot?
Simple rules of thumb. If you're protecting control electronics and preventing nuisance trips, size for 300 seconds of hold. For demand charge shaving or scheduled load shifting, you need hours. Cost-wise, targeted pilots, think 2K to 10K, are common and can be justified by avoiding a single emergency replacement or a few service calls. Factor in possible utility rebates too.
Give me a 24-hour pilot checklist I can hand to my supervisor and the electrician. Fast and actionable.
Do this. 1. Baseline 24 hours. Log voltage, contactor closures, and BMS alarms. 2. Install a 24V control UPS, and, if needed, a battery-backed relay on the contactor coil. 3. Implement a temporary BMS logic change to suppress 1-second faults and enable buffer-active logging. 4. Monitor another 24-48 hours and compare. Document wiring, parts, and test results.
Vendor phone script. What are the 4 questions I must ask so they don't upsell me into a full building battery?
Ask, what's the rated hold time and current at control voltage? Can you provide a control side only wiring diagram? Is the unit UL listed for this application? What's the failure mode? Does it fail safe, and how are you notified? If they steer straight to hours-long systems without answering those, step back.
Curious. When do you stop piloting and escalate to bigger storage or a microgrid?
Escalate when your pilots show repeated multi-minute or sustained events, or when the facility's objectives include multi-hour resiliency or demand response revenue. In short, data-driven escalation. Don't skip the small test. Most sites either fix with a small buffer or prove they need larger solutions.
Short field win. Community college rooftop. Baseline showed frequent short depths. We installed a 24-volt UPS on the control bus, added a battery-backed relay on the contactor coil, tuned the BMS to suppress 1-second faults, and logged for 48 hours. Result? 2 avoided service calls and no compressor welds. The facilities lead called it a tiny, glorious victory.
Tiny and glorious, exactly. The pilot cost less than a single emergency visit. Scoped, documented pilots de-risk decisions and make you tougher to oversell.
3 things to do this week. 1. Pick a single trouble RTU and run 24 hours of baseline logging. 2. Call your electrician and discuss a control side UPS. Use the 4 vendor questions Blaze gave you. 3. Scope a 1-day pilot and commit to logging results for 2 weeks.
Quick caution, do not jury-rig battery connections to line voltage circuits. Get the electrician involved, get sign-off, and keep your life safety wiring untouched. Then run the pilot. You'll know fast whether you need more or you just avoided an emergency replacement.
If you'd like our pilot checklist, templates, vendor questions, a sample BMS trigger matrix, and the short form for your electrician, visit onsiteinsightpodcast.com/pilot checklist to download it and nominate a facility case you think we should highlight. We read submissions and select real sites to feature practical outcomes.
Final take. Small buffers won't solve every large-scale resilience goal, but they stop the short events that cause most costly failures. Test, measure, and scale only when the data asks you to.
Thanks for listening to On-Site Insight, where we discuss issues important to the unsung heroes of facility management. On-Site Insight, where we provide insight for your on-site. Grab the pilot checklist at the show page, nominate a site, and we'll see you next time.